This is my Module 13 on tort liability. A tort is an actionable or civil wrong committed against one person by another that is independent of contract. If injury occurs as a result of the actions of school personnel, liability charges may be imminent. Liability may result from deliberate acts committed by another or acts involving negligence. So the first case I wanted to look at was D. Gruer versus Harkness. Even though this was an older case, I found it quite intriguing and was very shocked by what occurred in this situation. So it was an athletic initiation that the coach was actually involved in. Previously, they had held it off campus in a church basement. However, that facility was unavailable this year, and so they held it in the school gymnasium. They did receive permission from the administration, but what they were doing is they were laying the students down, they were placing a bowl of water on their chest, and then they were passing an electrical shock through the students. The coach had actually tested the shock and considered it to be a safe level, and then began to utilize it with the players. However, once they got to about the fourth player, there was water spilled on the ground, and they continued to conduct this initiation in the same manner. And when they thought that this particular player had fainted, it had actually caused him to die immediately upon the shock. So reactive measures, I would assume that there would be the same outcome if I as an administrator was to allow that type of event to occur. However, I would hope that I would be proactive and have a zero tolerance for hazing. I think students should have the opportunity to participate in school-sponsored activities without fear or worry about that initiation process. I would definitely discourage staff involvement in any type of questionable activity by the staff member participating. It gives the perception of the district supporting that act. And then finally, I would be very cautious as to what I allowed the facilities to be used for. We want to ensure that anything occurring on school premises is a safe environment for any who are involved. Looking at the professional ethics behind this, I think it's our job as educators to prevent harm to students' health or safety. And then we need to be intentional about ensuring that we are protecting our students. The next case was Tinker versus Des Moines Independent School District. These students were wearing black armbands, kind of in a protest for the Vietnam War. They were wanting a truce. So they had set dates that they would wear these armbands, and then they had chose 2 days that they were going to fast during that time period. 2 days prior to the first fast date, the school created a policy stating that anybody wearing the band would be asked to remove it immediately, and if they chose to not remove the band, then it would result in suspension. So there were 3 students who refused to remove their armbands, and they honored that suspension by the school district until the end of the fast and the protest period. So these students then sued for violation of their right to expression. Now the question that arose out of this case was it an actual interference with student learning, or was this a perceived possibility of a future disruption? So reactive measures probably would have been similar. I would assume that students in this case would have been upset about freedom of speech or freedom of expression. However, I feel like I would have made sure that the district was documenting the behaviors, and the students and staff members were very clear as to why they thought that this would be something that could interfere with student learning. District policies in place for protests and those types of items could have been very helpful in this case. And then you would also have to ensure that you had your board and your superintendent support prior to moving forward with something, especially with it being a political idea that is involved. Looking at those professional ethics, I think we've got to ensure that we're protecting students' ability to learn and effectively, communicating with the parents in the community. Again, I feel like when it becomes something that involves those political issues, that communication is even more important. And then we need to maintain a positive role in the community and those issues that are currently facing it. The next case I looked at was Gebser versus Lago Vista Independent School District. This was a high school student who was having a secret sexual affair with a teacher. There was no procedure or anti-harassment policy in place, even though it was already federally mandated. After the administration found out about the affair, the teacher was then immediately arrested and fired. So I think the key things here were that the school district, they did not respond, but they did not respond because no school official knew about the affair. As soon as it was brought to light, action was taken. So reactive measures, I think they did what they needed to do by immediately following up once this was brought to their attention. I would hope that prior to that, we would have appropriate policies in place regarding that student-staff relationship and those expectations, as well as providing students that opportunity to voice concerns, providing that safe environment where they felt like they could be honest with staff members as well as administration. Then looking at the ethics side of this, healthy relationships with students are a key for educators to be able to be successful in the classroom. We also need to be sure that we're prioritizing student learning and upholding laws and policies. They should have had those policies and procedures in place as mandated. Next, we've got Davis versus Monroe County Board of Education. This was a 5th grade student who claimed that they were being sexually harassed by another peer. The school was made aware of these accusations, and they chose not to do anything about it. So I think these two cases, the previous one and this one, differ a great deal because in this particular case, the school district was made aware and made a conscious decision to ignore the allegations, which then in turn allowed the harassment to continue. I would not be surprised if there was not legal action taken if I was to allow something similar to occur in my district. I feel like policies and procedures, again, should have been in place for sexual harassment. There should have been that safe way for students to voice that concern, and that concern be addressed through an action plan for what the district expectations are for those kinds of accusations being voiced, and then doing something to investigate and prevent further harassment. Looking at the ethics, we need to prioritize the health and safety of all students, and we've got to take accusations seriously. I'm not saying that we automatically jump to conclusions. I do think there has to be a thorough investigation, but we cannot have those allegations made known and then sit on the information. Finally, we've got TK and SK versus the New York City Department of Education. Excuse me. This was an identified student who was in the process of developing their IEP. They had recently been identified. In the classroom that they were in, many of the peers were bullying this student, being aggressive, things such as pinching until bruising, stomping on the student's toes, as well as verbally, and isolating the student from the remainder of the class. Teachers and administrators were made aware of the situation. However, they chose to take no action. For instance, the parents had sent letters to the teachers, as well as during an IEP meeting tried to voice that concern to the administration because they felt like it hindered the student's ability to learn. However, those conversations were denied. So the parents had sought out enrollment at another school. They had to actually pay a month's tuition at that school since it was a private institution prior to the student beginning. In the end, they denied the student admittance based on the IEP. So the parents were seeking that reimbursement from the school district because they felt that the district had ignored those accusations and therefore had pushed them to have to seek out other educational opportunities for their students. This case, again, is one of those that the school was made aware and they made a choice not to act. Reactive measures. As a parent and as a school administrator, I feel like those parents were had the opportunity to find a better academic opportunity for their students, and I am not surprised by the actions that were taken following this. I would hope that policies and procedures would be in place for handling a similar situation, and again, having that action plan so that parents as well as the staff members know what that protocol is for handling, whether it be sexual harassment or bullying, for handling those accusations, and ultimately seeing the situation change for that student so that the school environment is a positive environment. As professionals, I feel like we must value the student's health and safety. We have to ensure the value of student learning, and we have to build a safe environment for all of our students. I really enjoyed this assignment as these were very possible circumstances for us to be facing. The first one was a little far-fetched, but even so, I think looking back at history and the way things have been handled in the past gives us the opportunity to look at these cases with hindsight and therefore make better decisions for the future for ourselves ourselves as administrators, our staff that we're going to be working with, and all of the students that we will be impacting. Thank you for watching.